So do you see, like, I have clearly what you say, and then even have, like, stage directions?
Okay, so this is after, like, you've presented and you're finished and everything, and then I've recognized senators for their questions. Are you going to be the one calling on the senators for questions, or am I doing it?
Like,
Have we decided?
I'm taking. So does someone have a pen I can borrow? I keep hearing it. I can do anything. The Senate will now come to order. The Pledge of Allegiance will now be led by Chief Advisor Jeep, followed by a moment of silence and reflection. Please stand if able.
I pledge
Pledge of
allegiance
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated.
The clerk will now call the roll. Please correct the pronunciation of your name if it is incorrect.
Baber. Barnes. Barr. Bean. Bracy. Bryant. Byer. Calder. Cost. Creed. Durham. Felix. Galavati. Goldstein. Grunner. Haber. Hamilton. Harvey. Hensley. Hurd. Howe. Kay. Kwame. LaPinta. Lapsley. Lynn. Malachi. Miller. Montalto. Morgan. Peterson. Rangavajula. Ravi. Sane. Sellers. Spittler. Tanner. Vaught. Wall. Wenzel. Whitehead. Brash. John.
With a quorum being present, is there a motion to approve the Journal of January 24th, 2024 as found online? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. We are now in line for general orders of the Senate, beginning with reports from Senate leadership. Chairman Vaught and Senator Kay, you are recognized to give the Ad Hoc Committee on Financial Reform's report. Is there a motion to also suspend the rules to allow the special guests and senators to ask questions during the presentation? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. You guys are recognized to give the report.
Afternoon, everybody. It is an absolute joy, an absolute pleasure to be speaking in front of all of you here today. Don't know what's, ooh, sorry, my thing is moving. Don't know what's going to get me worse, the caffeine, the jitters, or the heat. So we're going there. But first off, I want to go over something real fast for all of you. We want questions. We encourage them. We welcome them. However, because we are going over a good bit of information in a very short period of time, we want to ensure that we get through this presentation in a decent hour. Don't want to keep you all here till 10 p.m. So we have slides dedicated to questions at the end of each segment. So please keep a hold of your questions and answer them at the very end of each segment. It'll just let us kind of go through these slides a little clearer, and we might actually be able to answer your questions before, well, you have to ask them. So that's always a good joy. So first, I'm going to go over the agenda real fast. Our problems, our why, what we're doing here today, and why all of you are sitting in this room listening to me ramble on. First off, I want to thank all of our guests in the back there. This project would not be the same without y'all, and we do appreciate you being here and assisting us wherever you have. We're going to talk about 3 short things real fast. On the road to reform, Student Senate's internal finance issues and how we solved them. Our second one is the enhanced student experience. Everything that we do, everything that our faculty does, this university is tailored to ensuring that our students have the best time, the best experience here. And we were looking to ensure that they have the best experience here. And so we are looking at an increase in a fee in order to ensure that they have that best experience by allocating and allowing us as a body and the faculty and staff to have the resources necessary to achieve their goals. And finally, something we're very proud of, the future, a union of ideas and concrete. It's a nice, catchy nickname, but we are looking at an expansion and construction of a new student union. Absolutely massive project, and we're really proud to kind of roll out the carpet on this one. So, on the road to reform, our why. I'm a big fan of whys, why you do things. It's incredibly important to me. I think if you don't know why you're doing something, you should probably step back and reevaluating what you're doing. So I wanted to go over our why for a short period of time before I begin in earnest. And I want everyone in this body, I want everyone in this room to imagine something just for a second. I want you to imagine the students of the university. I want you to imagine them outside of the class. What happens when they take off their scholar's cap? They become people. They become no longer just students, but individuals with talents, capabilities, interests. And it is our job as a university, as faculty, as senators, as leaders, to ensure that when they're pursuing these interests, when they're pursuing these passions, that they're doing so with the best of their ability and with the best of our resources. Because that's not just a painter who's looking at a drawing on a canvas. That might one day be an artist whose works are in museums and galleries. It's not just an engineer creating the next Tiger Burn. That could be someone producing the next world wonders. And it's not just students sitting around a table laughing and joking, but unbreakable bonds that'll be formed. They're formed at this university. And that's my why, and I hope it's all of your whys as well. Our students, their legacies, the university and its legacy. And I think that's incredibly important to keep in mind when we discuss these. So, moving on just a little bit. I've talked about our why. The university agrees with me. President Emeritus helped us to shape the Carolina experience not too terribly long ago. And students are at the heart of this project. It should be our goal. It should be our why to ensure that his goals are envisioned and that our goals are envisioned to benefit everyone we can. So how does that impact, how does that affect internal reform? for Student Senate. Student Senate, this project has been going on for about 3 odd months. So despite what you might think on a volunteer basis, that is not a lot of time. But we managed to do a significant amount of work in a very short period of time. And we identified 3 primary concern areas. The first one was how we allocated resources. The second one was the language in our codes. And the third one was our fund itself. I'm going to talk about the first one in just a second, or the last one in just a second, but I'm going to talk about these real fast. We identified the 2 biggest issues was we have confusing codes. They're hard to read, and we understand that. We also identified that how we allocate resources, how we allocate money, can sometimes be problematic. Problematic might not be the best word, but it can sometimes be unfair. And so what we wanted to do, we wanted to establish a more equitable distribution system. We wanted to make the codes clear, and we wanted to ensure that everybody's responsibilities, regardless of what they were clear, outlined, and viable. And it's something that we did through 2 major pieces of legislation. We completely rewrote the codes. That was a task that has been taking me too many hours, too many late nights, and too many cups of coffees. But we're really excited to unleash it today. So if any of you are staying here late, you'll probably get to hear a good bit of our discussions and what we actually went in, the nitty-gritty of it. But we fixed our allocation process. We went from a very mechanical system to a priority-based one that's intended to encourage student activity on campus. We also cut unnecessary and repetitive language. The codes, which were previously 17 pages, got pushed into an 8-page document. So I think about 33% roughly of it got cut. A significant change. And we also made sure that the comptrollers and the treasurers, their responsibilities were clear. We wanted to ensure that our timeline for reimbursement was more equitable. And we also wanted to ensure that we have more transparency for our students. And so with these 2 changes, we did that in spades. Now, I don't want to keep too much on mine because we've got some bigger kind of components to go over, so I'm going to push it over to questions. If anyone have any for me, please let me know. If not, we're going to invite Jacob Vaught up to the stand so he can discuss it.
Chairwoman Creed.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So the intention is this. Previously, there wasn't really a priority system. There was, but it was more set up as conference tournaments and then everything else, if I'm not mistaken, or tournaments, conferences, and then everything else. And our intention was we wanted to flip those around. We think tournaments are important. We think conferences are important. But we know what reaches the most students, what is most viable, is the things that occur on campus, the things that are open to everyone. And so we wanted to ensure those are the top of our list. They're also the things that cost the least. So if we can fund all of those, that should be our priority. Any other questions? If not, please welcome Jacob Vaught to the stand. He has done a significant amount of work. He is our math wizard, and he truly deserves to be up here.
Well, I don't know about being a math wizard, but Camden's also done a lot of work with the internal finances. I'm going to be talking about the enhanced student experience, primarily talking about what our what the campus activity fee funds on campus, and how that affects us, and what changes we'd like to propose to fix the issue. So first off, I'd like to discuss what exactly the campus activity fee is. It's just it's a big fee that students pay. It's $87, and it provides a ton of benefits to students. It funds on campus activities like Tiger Burn. It funds funds all the on-campus activities. Funds about all the activities happens in Russell House except for anything dining hall. Funds everything happens on Green Street. Funds all the different student orgs, and student government gets a 3% cut of that budget. So that's one of the changes we'd like to make coming in the future, changing how the allocation works. And students pay about $87 a month into this, or a semester into this, and we're going to change that a little bit. But the fee primarily funds student activities, student life events, and other programs, operational costs. behind me, you should have a little graph over here on the on the right side. It's the student enrollment numbers, so between 31, 37,000. You can see that for the past decade, how it's been increasing from around 31 to 36,000 students, and that affects how much we can give per student basis. If you look down in the left corner, so 2012, on that left axis, it shows our funds from 185 grand to 365. It's just a scale, and it shows how the bottom two graphs, inflation and org growth, have increased over the past few years. And both of those by themselves indicate about that we should be, today, our fund should be at 250 grand, not 186 grand, because with inflation and with org growth, we're not able to allocate the same amount to students. We have to allocate more amount to every single org that's making a request, and there are more orgs making these requests. And without that additional increase of funding, we have to make cuts in certain places. And one of the things we've done is we've had one of the strictest finance committees in about the last decade. We approved about 60% of any allocation went through, so a lot lower than in previous years. It was closer to 70 or 80%. So we've done a lot to combat this, but it's still not enough, and it won't be enough if the trends keep continuing with inflation and org growth. On the graph, I also have a line that shows what combined the cost should be, because you don't just take inflation or growth individually. You have to consider all of it as a factor. And if you look back there, it shows that when you combine both of them, it should be, our fund should be around 350 grand if we continue our 60% allocation rate for the next 2 years. This is what our committee kind of came to the agreement with multiple different models. This will be in our report. We've got about 8 different models you can look at that show different amounts of funding. This would be about 88% increase in our student organizational fund. And the last time our fund was increased was in 2016, when it was increased by $2, so not too much. This is a different graph. It shows a very similar thing. On the right side, it shows the Senate terms. So if you look at the very bottom, 115th Senate term refers to the 2023 to 2024 school year. And if you look at it, you can see all the different years listed out there. If you look at the bottom, there's a little tiny anomaly. That's the year of COVID. We allocated maybe 20 grand, very tiny amount because no orgs are on campus. You'll see a dashed line about 186. That shows what our current fund cap is. And you'll see a projection. If you look at the thickest line up there, the square symbols, that is this year, 115, the 115th Student Senate, 23-24, and you'll see our projection shows a different range of where our projected cost would be if we had funds to keep giving out. So we have, there's a trend line that shows 350K, which is pretty similar to what inflation or growth had predicted prior. And so that's basically what this data shows. This data just shows that inflation or growth are one of the highest predictors of what student orgs are actually requesting here on campus. And if you look at what the horizontal axis, that's just the number of weeks within a semester or within a Senate term. So what is our solution? We are proposing a kind of a double solution. We want to increase the campus activity fee by $13. We think it's a very small increase for the students, and this will be able to improve the critical support for tons of students on campus. This will allow for more events to be funded. Tiger Burn, anything Gamecock Entertainment does, a lot of Green Street events, a lot of things that happen in Russell. And we'd like to increase $13, and we think this will be able to match enrollment projections for about next year or two. It won't last forever, again, because the number of students keeps going up, inflation, but we think this is a good place to get to for today. The student government, what we want to see is we also want to see our pot of the money increase slightly. We're going to go from 3% to maybe 1 or 2% additional to meet our budget expectations of 350 grand, which is what our models had said. And I think those are primarily it, but I'm open to any other questions. I know that was a lot of numbers and not always the clearest how to explain those.
Chairwoman Ravi.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Right. We don't include taxes. I don't believe taxes is something that we have to consider with tuition, but that's something did not look at. Or
Senator LaPinta.
we went with a 2% increase year over year. That's what we went with. So it's just like standardized, yeah. Nothing too special.
Senator Hensley.
Uh, why we want to increase our percentage of it? So the reason is if we increase our budget, or if we increase the whole entire campus activity fee by $13, again, we only get 3% of the campus activity fee currently, or approximately 3%. If we increased it by $13, that would give us an increase of about $7,000 to our budget, which isn't going to solve anything. So we'd like to have a percent increase of the whole entire campus activity fee as a total, so we can actually get to the amount we need. If we just increase the fee directly without changing the percentages, the fee would have to go to hundreds of dollars, which is something that we prefer not to have to make the students, not have to increase fees, because I don't want to pay more fees as a student.
Senator Hensley.
Right, sorry, yeah. The undergraduate organizational, or student org fund, undergraduate student organizational fund, yeah.
Any other questions for Senator Vaught? Is there a motion to have Speaker Pro Tempore Baber assume the chair while Speaker Eubanks presents on the new student union? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Well, hello, everyone. Like I said, we're so grateful that you guys have chosen to spend your Wednesday evening with us. And again, we cannot thank you enough for your support for this project over the past 3 months. I know the Ad Hoc Committee has done a lot of great work in terms of really crunching the numbers, really looking where we can save spending, and also where we can increase for the entire department and hopefully kind of enhance our student experience. I did just want to cover a couple things. I know some of the ad hoc committee's data was very, very student organizational specific and very student government specific. But I cannot stress enough what a $13 increase would do, not only just for our organization and the other organizations that we allocate, but for each and every unit that is funded by this fee. It would help the students that chooses to get legal services from campus. It would help the student that chooses to participate in traditions and the fun and free events on campus. It would help the student grow as a leader and grow in serving their community. It would also help student life employees with their own salaries in some cases. This fee is more than just the student organizational fund, but it truly is what is the beating heart of campus, which is this student experience. Now, I'm going to point you again back to when President Emeritus in 2022 asked us to imagine what a student experience and what our campus could look like. That campus could be thriving with this increase. That campus could be and could have enough resources and enough support for each of the units funded by this fee to truly help the student have a whole-rounded experience in college. That's what this increase does. Not only does it help us hopefully allocate to more student organizations, but it helps every single person within the Department of Student Life. It also helps the student get accustomed to calling this place home, which is something that we all chose to do when we chose to come here. So, without further ado, now I'd like you to envision the future. We've talked about what a $13 increase would do for student government. We've talked about what a $13 increase would do for every single unit within the Department of Student Life and everything that this fee funds. Now let's talk about what happens when we outgrow that money. We also outgrow the space along with it. So I want you to imagine in the next couple steps with me about what a new student center could look like for our student experience, but also what a revitalized and enhanced student experience could look like for the student. So, without further ado, this is the future, a union of ideas and concrete. So, why a new union? That's a question that's been going around for the past couple months as we're working in tandem with President Thompson and our VP Rex Tolliver to socialize this idea. Well, just like we talked about in terms of student organizational funding, and just how we talked about that more resources need to be allocated to the Department of Student Life and to this fee, we also talked about that enrollment has come and gone, and enrollment in this university is continuing to grow. This university has experienced massive enrollment surges over the past, I would say, 10 to 20 years, and we want it to keep going necessarily. We want students to call this university home, but our student experience and our facilities have got to meet that growth. Enrollment was around 23,000 when Russell House was last renovated in 1976. It technically has not been renovated since. And that is excluding the dining renovation that Aramark did for Gamecock Park. That is how far we are behind in terms of adding square footage to the building and in terms of supporting the student and this experience. Our current enrollment is now around 35,000. And we continue to hopefully estimate for a 2% to 3% in growth in all things in the university, especially in enrollment. So with that enrollment growth, we've seen a lack of space, right? We lack space for efficient dining options. We have nowhere else to go, folks, when it comes to our dining facilities here. The actual lines behind the scenes in each of these eateries have been pushed to the max. We have nowhere else to go, and we have nowhere else to look or build. So what do we have to do? We have to rethink this project from the ground up. Not only just dining options and cooking space, we're also lacking student organizational space. Just this last year, around 53% of the use in Russell House was just student organizational reservations. Just reservations on space that clubs can use here. That is a massive increase that we've never seen before because of the org growth, because of the enrollment growth, right? So how do we properly make sure that we have the space to allow the student orgs to use our beautiful student center and have the space to do the activities that they set out to do for their student experience? And we also, again, lack lounge space, study space, and event space. All of that is tied into the massive surge in enrollment and the massive surge in org growth that we've seen over the past couple years. Now, with the lack of space and with enrollment, you've also got an emerging technological field that's coming. We're in 2024. Technology is moving at the speed of light, and the current infrastructure is just not built to sustain the technology and support services our students critically need. And remember, that goes back to what the fee actually funds. It's those support services that a lot of their offices are housed in this building. For example, the Leadership and Service Center, there's nowhere else to expand as one of the emerging programs in the Russell House. For example, Gamecock Entertainment, there's nowhere else left to expand in supporting our students for the free and fun events on campus. You've also got administrative offices down in the West Wing. There is nowhere else to expand. The Office of Multicultural Student Affairs, there's nowhere else to expand. There's nowhere else to provide more services and more experiences for those students. And that also comes, again, with the severe curve of technology. More student organizations are requesting technological advancements, are requesting technological improvements in their student experience. And our student union is falling behind in terms of just the raw technology that we have access to allow for their student experience to be complete. And remember when I said that our student union had been last renovated in 1976. Well, folks, we are the lowest in the SEC for that. Every other SEC school has added on to their student union by square footage in a shorter amount of time. I'm going to show you a graph in a couple slides, and it'll show our university way behind the pack. So we are falling behind in what our union offers in comparison to other peer institutions. Now I want you to think just for a second. When you came on your admissions tour and they toured you around campus, right, they showed you the horseshoe, but what else did they show you? They show you the heartbeat and the lifeblood of campus, and that is the student union. And in that student union, you have the heartbeat and lifeblood of the Department of Student Life and the units that provide the experience to students to create a more whole-rounded experience. Again, when you go on that admissions tour, they show you Russell House, they show you the amenities that it offers, they show you the experiences you can have and hear. But compared to other institutions, I'm not so sure that some students would make the same choice. So again, that's why we need to think about what the future can hold for us and think from the ground up. So like I said, I'd show you a graph, and just to point out, this red dot right here with the red circle, guess who that is? That's us. I'll show you more on the graph as well. This big black circle right here with all the other multicolored dots, that's every other SEC institution for the most part. And if you look on the right, or excuse me, your right axis, you will see in the bigger text, those are our peer institutions, right? So you've got University of Kentucky, which we'll look at in a minute, University of Tennessee, University of Missouri, University of Georgia. They're our peer institutions. They are very similar in terms of enrollment. They're very similar in terms of academic instruction and performance and strategic priorities. And yet, where are we? We're here. And they're there. I don't know what shows a more compelling image than this graph right here, because this is a direct representation of the need to really invest in our student experience on campus and to get a new student center so that it can help the Department of Student Life and other units and other offices on campus function the way they're supposed to function. And just to give you a little bit more clarification on the graph, the lower axis is in terms of years. So you have us at around 1976, 1975. Then you have other institutions going from the early 2000s. Then on the very other side of the graph, you have enrollment data. So again, as we can see, our peer institutions are just like us, have the same, almost the same needs as us, yet are almost 20, 30 years ahead of us in terms of making sure that their student experience matches the enrollment growth of their university. I don't know about you, but something doesn't sit right with me on that. And so, that being said, I know we talked about why a new student union. I showed you that we're lacking competition, what other institutions are. Now I just want you to picture what this new student union could look like. Here we have a new state-of-the-art standalone dining facility that currently in the plans is to take over the Thompson Health building. Here we have the opportunity to allow students to have access to many dining experience and options on campus. And we also have the support needed for each of those dining experiences to have more space to cook, literally and figuratively, to cook. But we also have a bigger space to allow students to engage with other students, to allow different units and departments to truly hold events in our new standalone state-of-the-art dining facility. So again, keep in mind, right now the plan is to put that where Thompson is. So what would it look like for the rest of the Student Center? Here we have a lounge and speaker space. Here we have a space that is mostly glass and reflects natural light and is more sustainable than our current building. Here we face the university fountain, We face certain aspects of Davis Field. We face greenery, nature. We're connected to the lifeblood and heartbeat of this campus through this image. This is something that we're looking to do in terms of thinkerspace, in terms of student org space here, in terms of leadership and service programs housed out of this section, in terms of the free and fun events that could come out of this section. I know one of my favorites is Bob Ross painting. This would be an amazing space for that as you overlook the university fountain. What a view. But this is just part of what we are trying to build with this new student union, what we're trying to build in this enhanced student experience. Now you're probably wondering, okay, great, you've showed me, the state-of-the-art dining facility. You've showed me what it could look like on the inside. But Speaker Eubanks, what will it look like on the outside? Now you can gasp. Oh. So this is a possible aerial shot done by the design group of what the outside of our new conceptualized student union could look like. Now let me tell you some facts about this student union. This student union makes sure that students have the ability to connect with their peers. It makes sure that students have the ability to grow as a leader and to engage in service opportunities throughout this community. This student union has the ability to allow students to engage with other students in certain functions and events that are free and fun to them. But not only does this student union do that, this student union also allows students to gain legal services in case they need of them. This student union also allows them to connect with the best and the brightest that our university has to offer. And that's staff, students, and faculty. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about an enhanced student experience. Not only just the increase in the campus activity fee to help us get our units to a place where we can function effectively for the new enrollment growth, but we also have a building that will reflect that same exact idea by allowing the units to grow and to expand in this area. So imagine my special guest in the back. Imagine each of your offices being able to expand than what they are now. Imagine the Office of Multicultural Affairs being able to be expanded in terms of office space, in terms of meeting space, in terms of the intersection lounge being multiple different rooms. Imagine GE being able to be a maker space where students can come in, plan events, they can plan Coxstock, they can plan Tigerburn, a very flexible and a very flowable space. Imagine the Leadership and Service Center expanding to offering more study space, more think tanks. The fact that we only have one think tank in this building is a crime, right? Imagine all of these offices being able to expand like they were meant to expand from the very beginning of their inception. Imagine the Office of Health and Well-Being being able to be connected to such a lovely building and then being able to offer support services within this building without having to compete for reservation space. Imagine every other organization, or rather, imagine every other student organization, faculty group, staff group, being able to use this building to what it was made to do, which was to offer a central heartbeat and lifeblood to this campus. That is what we're trying to imagine here, folks. Now, I know I showed you a lot of fancy images done by the design group, and I've talked a lot about ideas, concepts. But a part of this conversation is also the financial requirements. A new union is not going to pop up overnight, and a new union is not going to pay for itself overnight. So our committee's goal and the Student Senate's goal was to go into the numbers and give a pretty accurate read on what the students' appetite would be in terms of a financial requirement needed for this union to be built. So, in that research, we have looked at a lot of proposed timelines, and we have come up with a proposed timeline that matches necessarily the student's appetite for the fee, but also matches the exponential model, which I will talk about in a second. So again, for reference, this is a proposed timeline. This in no way indicates a finalized timeline voted on by the Board of Trustees at all. But consider this student senate's and ultimately the student body's opinion on how this building should be constructed. So 2024 to 2025 is the pre-demolition phase. We began utilizing academic spaces and other local venues for student organizations to use. For example, we start advertising Rutledge Chapel. You guys can meet there, by the way. That's a space that student orgs can meet and have events. We're gonna start advertising other academic spaces on campus. We're gonna start advertising other spaces outside of Russell House to prepare for its eventual construction. We're also promoting other university spaces, such as the Alumni Center or even the Convention Center, to house more of your fun and free events, to house more of your student org events on campus. Overall, we're preparing the student body, and we're also preparing the staff and faculty for a transition to the construction timeline. Now, skip ahead to 2025 to 2028. We're in the era of a new dining facility, right? We start demolition of Thompson Health Center in the fall of 2025, and we finish construction of a freestanding, state-of-the-art dining facility where Thompson building stood currently. And as soon as that dining facility is open, then we move into the construction of the Russell House. I would like to make something clear. I think it's very, very important that as we're looking into the construction plans for both of these buildings, that the student experience is taken into an account, that we can't have both of these buildings closed at the same time. We cannot have a dining facility not offered in the central heartbeat of campus. So that's why student government, student senate, and the ad hoc committee, we definitely favor shutting down Thompson first, building the state-of-the-art standalone dining facility, and then having it open its doors to the students, and then moving along to the rest of the student center. We believe that would be the fairest way, and a way to still offer opportunities and experiences here for the students. So then skip ahead to 2028 to the 2030s. It's in our new union era, right? It's demolition of the Russell House Student Union, and in its place is exactly what I told you to help me imagine and conceptualize with those images. In its place is a student union that will finally offer the student experience, the opportunities and experiences that deserves. That each student that came on campus that chose this place as home, they get that experience that we are selling to them. And in this phase, we ensure that student activity and life can continue on as normal via other on-campus spaces, right? That's what I meant when I talked about promoting the Alumni Center, promoting the Convention Center, promoting Rutledge Chapel, promoting other academic spaces on campus. Promoting other spaces so that student life and student orgs are not necessarily interrupted by the construction. Now, I don't know about you, but this timeline has got me very excited because it's quick and it's fast. But the reason it is fast is because we desperately need it. We desperately need the increase. We desperately need a student union that can accommodate for our enrollment growth of where we are today and where we want to go. That's what we need, and we need it sooner rather than later. So again, remember I told you that a part of this conversation is the financial requirements of a new building. Well, what does that necessarily look like? Our committee has spent over 2 months digging in to construction timelines, digging into construction costs, digging in to certain costs about this new student project, but also digging into the appetite of what students would see in terms of financial requirements for this project. Now, I'm going to be a little bit real here. I'm a senior, and I'm sure the rest of you are going to be a senior in 2 short years, 1 short year, 3 short years. There may come a time where you may not see this new student center project, right? You may not see the increase in the campus activity fee. but that doesn't mean that it's not worth fighting for. I know when I came on this campus, I called it home for a reason. I called it home because I was so impressed about how big of a university it was, but how small it felt. I was so impressed that there were so many services in Russell House and beyond that could help me not only achieve academic success, but also success in leadership, success in service, and success in terms of just meeting other people and just engaging with the student population. That's why I called this place home. And I think it would be a stretch to say that you don't want that, or I think it would be a stretch to say that you don't want that for another person. Everyone wants the same feeling that when we came here as freshmen, we want that for another student. That's what we need to keep in mind, especially when talking about financial requirements. So, before I get into that, again, what does this new student union offer? Well, it's an expected 50% increase in space for all of the things that I just mentioned. Dining, revenue-producing functions, social study and student engagement functions, campus events, programming, student well-being and counseling, and ultimately the freshman welcome experience. Remember when I told you the story of students coming here during admissions tours? Well, that experience continues in orientation. The Office of New Student Orientation has found that students are still shopping when they come here for orientation. Multiple students usually take on multiple different orientations because they're still looking for that one institution to call home. Well, that's what this new student union does, and it does so well. It allows the freshman welcome experience to take place in this building, but to take place in the student center for most of the experience. There is a time and place for you to go visit your academic colleges. There is a time and place for you to go visit other parts of campus. But when we're talking about relationships and we're talking about when those relationships are formed, that starts in orientation. And honestly, what a better way to start those relationships in a beautiful new building. So, before we get into our projections for financial requirements, remember that graph that was not too long ago on a couple of slides where it showed us behind in square foot addition to student unions? Well, that's not all that we're behind in necessarily. Take two of our peer institutions, University of Kentucky, University of Tennessee. They're a peer institution because they model a similar enrollment, they model a similar growth, they model similar strategic priorities, similar academic involvement. Well, just look at the numbers here. University of Kentucky, the campus activity fee is $681 per semester. Okay? Look at University of Tennessee, $519 per semester. And then look where we are, $87 per semester. Now, these other peer institutions, I'm sure, are delivering an amazing student experience. I haven't gone there, so I can't necessarily say to the exact point. But at this university, we have such an amazing student experience that we are looking to the future to grow. This is exactly how you do this, folks, is the increase in the campus activity fee. Not only will support the units inside this proposed new student center, but will also, again, support the overall student experience. Now, you also have the student union fees per institution. Currently, we do have a student union fee, and it is $15 per semester per student. And of course, you know, students, you may not be able to necessarily see it in terms of the official www.sc.edu website, but it is rolled in to tuition like some other fees are. But if you look at other universities, you have University of Kentucky using the student union fee and their campus activity fee. You have the University of Tennessee doing a $300 facilities fee for their student union in-state per semester and a $450 out-of-state per semester. Again, you look at us, $15 per semester, folks, to support all of the amazing things that goes on in this building. $15. And apparently $87 supports all the amazing things that this fee includes. And a lot of those things are units housed inside this very building. So how do we use that data in determining what students will have to buy into? Again, I personally, as a student, would want another student to feel the same way I did when I stepped onto this campus. And so I've come to terms and I've accepted that while I may never see this student union project, it's not something to stop fighting for. It's not something to advocate for. It's something that will affect students and down the road for years and years to come. So, here is our models. We have laid out 3 different models. We have the traditional fee structure, which is just a flat fee of $143 per student per semester. Now, this project is a 30-year loan project, as most capital projects are. Capital projects are usually huge projects that big organizations or big institutions or big corporations are making in terms of infrastructure and revenue sources. So we could just go with the traditional flat fee structure of $143 for all 30 years. Every student pays the same. It never increases, it never decreases. But again, remember when I told you, while this union may not be seen in some of the students' eyes, it's not something that we should not fight for. But it is also something that we should maybe take into account, that fact that some students may never be able to set foot in this union as an undergrad. So that's exactly what this tiered model takes into account. We have 2 tiered models, a linear model and an exponential model. The linear model starts the fee at $100 per student per semester. Then it increases at an almost consistent rate until it flattens out at $150.50 for the rest of the 30 years. And that will cover the construction cost and ultimately cover the facilities fee as well. That's the linear model. The exponential model, though, is what happens if we have the fee model what the building is actually doing. What if we have the fee model the construction of the building, right? So what I mean by this is the starting fee would be at $100, but it wouldn't necessarily increase at a consistent rate. It would watch as the building is constructed, and as the building gets to a finalized state, the more expensive it becomes. Now, a question that we got during our prep is, more expensive? Is that necessarily unfair to the students closer towards the project? I can't say without this building almost costs around $290 million to construct. Folks, students are gonna have to buy into this building. Just as the faculty, the staff, the state, and even the financial, the higher-ups in the institution, the stakeholders, just as they're all buying into the institution, students have got to meet them where they are to make sure that our enhanced student experience dream becomes a reality. So the way we were necessarily able to justify the exponential model, and the reason we think it is the fairest model to impose on students in the next coming budget years, is because these students that will pay the $153 will be able to step into their new student experience and step into their enhanced student center almost and immediately as they're paying the fee. They're able to utilize the services and the functions that I talked about earlier. They're able to utilize the space. They're able to hold events here. They're able to use the building to its maximum capacity. But the students starting out at the $100 mark, again, may not be able to step into the union just like maybe a student towards the end of the fee model would. So that's why, as a student senate and as an ad hoc committee, we've kind of come up with these models, and we do think the exponential model is technically the fairest to impose on students, because it watches the building grow, it watches the building construct, and it watches the excitement of the building. It watches the excitement of the student population and how excited they are to step in to their new state-of-the-art dining facility, right? Their new multi-level student center where units are just busting out of the seams, busting out of the offices, expanding like never before, holding events like never before. That, folks, is a fair model. Now again, at the beginning of this presentation, we talked about Imagine Carolina. That's when President Emeritus first came here, and he worked with student government leaders, student org leaders, faculty, staff, and graduate students to imagine what our campus could look like in the future. Well, folks, we've done that. We've imagined for you, we have conceptualized with you, and we're here to support you all along the way. And that support has got to come from an increase in resources. And those resources come from two things: an increase in the campus activity fee and the conceptualization and construction of a new student center. Both of those things will take our student experience, the amazing student experience that we all fell in love with here on campus, and will enhance it to a level we've never seen before. Thank you. All right. Now that we've reached the end of the presentation, is there any final questions for myself? It can be on anything we talked about today. It can be on any section. Like I said, special guests, please do not hesitate to ask questions. I know there was a lot of information. Like I said, this report and this presentation, kind of going over the main points, will be available publicly in the next couple of days. So you can peruse it at your leisure. And we hope that certain stakeholders and certain governing bodies on this campus take the student's appetite and takes the student opinion and really, really tries to use it to make our student experience better. So, all right, and with that, I will take questions.
Chairwoman Ravi.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. You know, I think in a lot of these plans, we're trying to make sure that every office has what it needs to thrive. You know, I don't know if you've ever been in the Thompson Health Building. I'm sure a lot of you have towards the back. It is a decrepitly old building, and it is in need of something new. But if you go into the Center for Health and Well-Being, that is a state-of-the-art facility. That is a state-of-the-art facility that can accommodate mental health challenges, mental health issues on campus. It's a state-of-the-art facility that supports the student experience every step of the way. So I think it's time to bring our counseling center back home to where it needs to reside, which is in the Center for Health and Well-Being. Thank you.
Senator LaPinta.
So again, none of this proposal has not been voted on by the Board of Trustees yet. An agenda hasn't been set. That committee worked in tandem with a lot of different student life counterparts, our VP Rex Tolliver, to create this proposal and presentation. We're also working with President Thompson. So again, this is not officially voted on by the Board of Trustees, but that's why we're here today, right? We want to make sure that the governing bodies of this institution hear and see what the students' appetite are for these issues. So,
Senator Brash.
Yeah, great question. I think that is a valid concern. As we know, again, Russell House is in the center of campus, right beside some very prominent dormitories and different student life functions. Like I said, construction was a proposed timeline. I'm sure the details will get worked out if the proposal is voted on by the board and the next steps are taken in the project. I think from a student's perspective and from a student government perspective, I think it's important that we continue to advocate during this process that, again, student life and student functions are not interrupted during this process. But I think that's exactly what this proposal takes into account, right? We're making sure that clubs and organizations still have space to conduct their events and their meetings at separate academic spaces or even off-campus spaces, such as the Alumni Center or the Convention Center. We're also making sure that the Center for Health and Well-Being stays uninterrupted as well, so they can continue their vital work in assisting the student experience and the student body. We're also making sure the academic space around Russell House is also not interrupted. So while I can't give you a step-by-step on how that exactly, or what that exactly is going to look like, what I can tell you is all of those concerns are being thought about in this proposal, and again, ultimately are being decided on in the next couple months.
Senator Hensley. Granted. Oh, Hensley. Granted. Senator Tanner. Granted. Senator Tanner. Granted. Senator Morgan. Granted. Senator Morgan. Granted.
Is there any other final questions about the presentation, report, anything of that nature? Yes? That's a great question. Like I said, I can't speak to necessarily the financial plans of exterior bodies outside of the university. What I can only speak to is necessarily the student's appetite and what the financial requirements would be. And like I said, I truly do believe that the student's appetite centers around that $100 to $153 exponential model. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. So I think so I'll kind of answer both questions. I'll start with the first year experience fee. I think as we conceptualize what an enhanced student experience could look like, I think we also need to take into account the 4-year experience. In this 4-year experience, we're making sure that students past their first year are still able to come to the traditions that we hold near and dear on campus. We're advertising to them, we're showing to them that we want them at all of the different functions that student life can bring to the table. And so I think it's, not necessarily super relevant in terms of doing a fee just for the first years, because as we're moving and as we're evolving and growing out of COVID, the university is striving to make sure that a student feels supported and a student feels engaged in the student experience just past their first year. Now, I would say that there are other institutions that have instituted similar things to what you're talking about. And I can't necessarily speak for the conversations in other governing bodies here on campus, but what I can say from a student's perspective is if we're striving to make this university a true 4-year experience, then I think we gotta share the love. and that love can sometimes come with financial requirements. And then repeat your other question for me. Great question. One of the architecture design groups, I'm gonna butcher the name. I don't know if I can spell it correctly. Sasaki. Thank you. Sasaki. They essentially did a campus-wide survey talking about what is the most important spaces that you use here on campus. What are the spaces that your organization uses? What are the spaces that you as a student use? And so some of the questions in that we're delving into specifically the student union. And what do you have it? Majority of the responses were Russell House. I know that some surveys have been done by governing institutions and the architecture firm and design firm. We as a student senate don't necessarily have, I would say, the ability to conduct that big of a survey. I will say our initiative earlier in the fall called Food for Thought, where we did survey over 700 students in person and did little mini in-person interviews in return for free chicken minis. In that, a lot of responses we got were about academic spaces in Russell and organizational spaces within Russell. It also talked a lot about the functionality of this building and the functionality of the units in this building. So I can say that there is data out there that does support the construction of a new student union, and you know, I don't know necessarily the plans in terms of other governing institutions, whether they choose to do more more surveys or more polls for the student population. What I can tell you is that a lot of time has gone into the conceptualization of the images. A lot of time has gone into the actual discussion around the idea of a new student union. You know, one thing that comes to mind specifically is the Russell House Expansion Committee, which was made up of student leaders on campus. And they all bought into the project, and they all gave wonderful insight as to what should be in this new student union, as to what it should look like, and as to what the messaging behind it should look like. So, you know, in my opinion, I do think there's been a significant amount of student input on the project. But again, you know, more student input is never a bad thing. So, any other questions? All right. Well, we thank you guys so much for coming. I think, Senator Kay, did you want to close us out with the last slide? As we're closing out with the last slide, again, these slides and the report will be made public in the next coming days. And we talked a lot about different functions in the student experience during this presentation and exactly how that would go to impact not only the students, but also your units as well. So please ask questions. We definitely want to answer them. Like I said, this has been a 3-month-long project. We've taken a lot of time to delve into exactly what an increase would do for the student population, what an increase would do for the department, also what a new student union would do for the experience. And so please don't hesitate to ask me questions, ask any of the people on the committee questions. Like I said, we'd love to have further discussions with you on this matter. And we hope that you've been able to take some things from this presentation and take some of the student appetite and opinion from it. And we just thank you for sitting and experiencing this journey with us. All right, Ava, if you want to take it away.
Is there a motion to have Speaker Eubanks resume the chair? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered.
Good afternoon for the second time. I'm back. Couldn't get rid of me. I'm going to keep this incredibly brief because I know we're all itching to get to other things. So my piece of this was literally just I wanted to thank a lot of people. I want to thank, first of all the senators, all the guests. Y'all have been wonderful. Many of you in this audience have attended these meetings, and done just an incredible amount of work in this committee. And this project has been very near and dear to my heart. It was one of the things that I wanted to do when I got into office. So it means a great deal to me for all these people that worked on this committee and engaged us in this kind of presentation. And again, I wanted to thank all of our guests. Y'all have been wonderful. Some of y'all I've talked to, some of you have not, but for those that I have, it's been a pleasure meeting you. For those that I haven't, I hope to meet you. And I owe two big thanks before I go, but those would be to Senator Vaught over there in the corner. He's hiding away from me. He, like I mentioned before, was a math wizard. He put so many hours. I'm convinced he doesn't sleep. Actually, I know he doesn't sleep. This project would not have been the same without him in the slightest, and I owe him a huge set of thanks. And my second big component would have been Speaker Cameron Eubanks, who gave this kind of core group every tool, every opportunity they needed to succeed. So a huge thank you to both of them. This project would not have been nearly the same without them, and so I owe them a huge thanks, and I want to let you all know the work and effort that they put into this project. And that's where we'll end off. Thank you all.
Is there a motion to allow for a 10-minute recess to allow our guests to depart if they choose to do so and allow the senators a moment of personal privilege? Is there a second? Without objection so ordered, we now stand in a 10-minute recess. So not, so wait, is not underlined? Like, it's not under. Mm-hmm. The Senate will now come back to order. Please find your seats. Since that was an extended recess, the clerk will now call the roll again. If you're proxying for someone, please say proxy when it gets to their name so we can get an accurate read on quorum. Thank you.
Baber. Barnes. Barr. Barr. Bean. Bracy. Bryant. Byer. Calder. Cost. Creed. Durham. Felix. Galavati. Goldstein. Gruner. Haber. Hamilton. Harvey. Hensley. Hurd. Hurd. Howe. Kay. Kwame. LaPinta. Lapsley. Lynn. Malachi. Miller. Montalto. Morgan. Peterson. Rangavajula. Ravi. Sane. Sellers. Spittler. Tanner. Vaught. Wall. Wenzel. Whitehead. Brash. John.
With a quorum being present, we are now still in line for general orders of the Senate. Continuing on with reports from Senate leadership, Speaker Pro Tempore Baber, you are recognized to give a report on the Rules Committee.
Hey everyone, Rules Committee met at 5:30 on Sunday like usual, and we went over 4 pieces of legislation. 2 of them were sent back for a few edits, and 2 of them you'll be hearing about today. I yield my time to questions.
The Speaker Pro Tempore yields to questions. Is there any questions for the Speaker Pro Tempore? Seeing none, thank you so much. We'll now hear a report from the Academics Committee. Chairwoman Creed, you are recognized.
So academics met Monday at 6, like usual. We have 2 pieces of legislation hitting the floor. That's from Senator LaPinta. She'll tell you more about it a little bit later. Senator Sellers and Senator Bean are still looking into more information about expanding the post-orientation survey for transfer students. Senator Hamilton is also continuing to work on adding whiteboards in 650. And with that, I yield to questions.
The chairwoman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the chairwoman? Seeing none, thank you so much. We'll now hear a report from the Finance Committee. Chairwoman Durham, you are recognized.
Hi everybody. The Finance Committee usually meets at 3:30 p.m. on Fridays. However, we voted to allow more time for more funds to return before approving the only request that is currently at the Finance Committee stage. But we are excited to continue our work in the future. I yield my time to questions.
The chairwoman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the chairwoman? Saying none, thank you so much. We'll now hear a report from the Health and Safety Committee. Chairwoman Ravi, you are recognized.
Hey guys, so usual business in health and safety. As y'all know, the menstrual product drive is this week, so thank you all who've donated so far. And to those of you who haven't donated, donate. And then sign up for Pius Senator if you can. To those who've donated, if you didn't get the memo, there is a paper sheet next to the brown boxes where you donate products. If you want to participate in Pius Senator, your name must be on that sheet, or we will not let you participate, because that's how we keep track of who is donating and who isn't. When I mean participate, I mean the action of the pieing itself. So please put your name on there if you haven't done that already. We will be taking donations until the end of this week. We do have a partnership with the Zeta Tau Alpha sorority, and we will be getting their donations in at some point next week. So that's like pretty much the only exception that we have right now. But yeah, that's all I have for that. We will be having a tabling event on February 14th at Hip Hop Wednesday with AAAS. We're going to be talking about Black mental health on campus. We're going to be taking a survey specifically and handing out donuts to kind of understand what and how resources can be improved for our Black community on campus regarding mental health. We also have a couple legislations in the work, and I've talked about those the previous week, so just same old, same old. One last thing, we have a meeting with the Carolina Card people on February the 12th, and we're going to talk about adding a couple hotline numbers to the Carolina Card. And with that, I yield to questions.
The chairwoman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the chairwoman? Seeing none, thank you so much. We'll now hear a report from the Inclusion and Equity Committee. Chairwoman Bracy, you are recognized.
All right, so today we did not meet at 4 p.m. due to me having to leave my internship a little late to make sure I got here, but we will be meeting with each other at the end of session today to discuss how we're going to do our tabling at Hip Hop Wednesday on February 14th. I yield to questions.
The chairwoman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the chairwoman? Seeing none, thank you so much. We'll now hear a report from the Judiciary Committee. Chairman Bryant, you are recognized.
Good evening, everybody. So, Judiciary will be meeting Friday. The time is TBD due to the fact that we have put in a reservation for the KJ Williams courtroom at the School of Law. So we're waiting on that confirmation. And the Judiciary Committee will be reviewing and having a hearing for 2 Associate Justice nominations to the Constitutional Council. And potentially some bills are coming down the pipeline today. So with that, I will yield to questions.
The chairman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the chairman? Speaker Pro Tempore Baber. Point of information, the nominations will be read across the desk shortly.
Yes. I don't want to preempt the good news, or preempt the news, yes.
Any other questions for the chairman? Seeing none, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you all.
We will now hear a report from the Powers and Responsibilities Committee. Chairman Harvey, you are recognized.
Hey everyone, Powers met yesterday at 6:30. We worked on the presentation to introduce Senate to prospective senators. We finished it up, and I'm currently in contact with a representative from Carolina Life to present there. And if anyone has any organizations that they're interested or that they think could have members that are interested in Senate, please come talk to me and see if we can get in contact to introduce them. I yield my time to questions.
The chairman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the chairman? Seeing none, thank you so much. We will now hear a report from the Student Life Committee. Chairwoman Malachi, you are recognized.
Hi everyone, happy Wednesday. Student Life met Monday at 6 o'clock. We went over our personal initiatives, kind of legislation that we're working on, so that should be coming out within the next few weeks. And with that, we also voted on SBL 11550, and we found that unanimously favorable. With that, I yield my time to questions.
The chairwoman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the chairwoman? Seeing none, thank you so much. We will now hear a report from the Sustainability Committee. Is there any senator willing to give a report? Senator LaPenta, you are recognized.
Good evening, everybody. So sustainability met on Monday at 7 this week. It was a super short meeting because we didn't really have that many people show up. So for those sustainability members that did not make it, please continue to brainstorm. We can continue to talk about our new ideas this coming Monday at 7 p.m. in the LSC. Jackson also had a very productive meeting with, Chairman Hensley had a very productive meeting with Larry Cook from the Office of Sustainability yesterday, and he got a lot of good guidance about what is feasible and what actionable items the Office of Sustainability would like to see out of climate legislation. And again, if you're interested in joining sustainability, please do. And with that, I yield to questions.
The senator yields to questions. Is there any questions for the senator? Senator Wenzel. Granted. Senator Wenzel. Granted. Any other questions for the senator? Seeing none, thank you so much. We will now hear a report from the Freshman Council. Are there any representatives from the Freshman Council present? You guys are recognized to give a report before the body.
Thank you, Speaker. Good evening, Senators. My name is Jeffrey Lyons, and I'm a political science major from Clemens, North Carolina. And I am also on the Freshman Council's Sustainability Committee. And we will just be giving updates from the 6 Freshman Council committees. My committee, Sustainability, we currently partnered with Sustainable Carolina and are working to plan a sustainable cooking class with the campus dietitian, and we will be doing that at the end of February. And we are also still working to organize a pop-tab drive for the Ronald McDonald House, which we also hope to start by the end of the month. For the academic committee, they had a big event this week called Hot Drinks for Hot Takes, and they were handing out hot chocolate on Davis Field in exchange for student opinions on academics and syllabi. They tabled yesterday and finished up tabling today. For the DEI committee, they are working to plan a gala held at the Hollings Library, which will be a black tie formal to support and celebrate diversity across campus. And the RSVP will open on February 8th.
Hello, Senate. My name is Cameron Fisher. I'm a member of the Freshman Council Health and Safety Committee. Currently, we're working on a potential tabling event to pass out personal safety alarms in order to hopefully prevent sexual assault and also increase awareness of it. And we're also providing information when we do that. The Community Outreach Committee is currently working on a collection day and service day for Transitions, which is a local homeless shelter here in Columbia. And the Student Life Committee is working on a tabling event where they'll be passing out Celsius to students, and that will be on February 21st. Thank you. We yield our time to questions.
The representatives yield to questions. Are there any questions for the representative? Senator Felix.
I believe it's on Davis Field, but I'm not entirely sure.
Any other questions? Chairwoman Ravi.
Okay, we appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much for coming to give a report. We will now hear a report from the Constitutional Council. President Thompson, you are recognized to give a report for Chief Justice Buchmeier.
I'll be brief. We swore in Macy Galt to the Constitutional Council this week as an Associate Justice, and with that, I yield to questions.
The President yields to questions. Are there any questions for the President? Saying none, thank you so much. We will now hear a report from the Speaker of the Student Senate, Cameron Eubanks, Chief Advisor Emily Jeep. You are recognized.
Also going to be keeping the report short tonight. So the first item, just remember that In terms of attendance, you are allowed a maximum of 3 unexcused absences, and you'll receive an email after you miss your 3rd Senate meeting just saying that, like, hey, if you miss one more meeting, then at the 4th unexcused absence, your term in Senate will be voted on. And also just remember that we do have technically the Senate chambers reserved until like 8 p.m. So please try to like stay here for the full time.
And point of information, the codes actually say we can go technically till 9 p.m. So keep that in mind.
Also, just a reminder again, in terms of dress code, make sure we're all in business professional. So for guys, that means, wearing like a nice jacket with slacks and a button up. And then for girls, that means like, like a nice blouse and pants and then a blazer or maybe like a dress and a blazer. Also, there will be a legislation workshop coming up, I believe, on February 8th. So please watch out in your emails for more information on that and also in the group meet. And with that, I yield to questions.
And point of information, in that legislative workshop, there will be free food, an incentive for all of you to come. This workshop is the first of its kind in the way it was designed. It is designed to accommodate both new senators and old. It is essentially, imagine a more, I would say, hands-on experience than the retreat was last semester. It is designed to have each of you work on your ideas and legislation together and to come up with some legislation by the end of the night while also engaging in Chick-fil-A activities.
And it will be a competition-based workshop, so hopefully we're working on the prize, but maybe if you guys win or whoever wins can have a dress-down day for Senate. So.
And also, another point of information, something that we are going to start with the menstrual product drive is the senator or the committee that brings in the most products will get to dress down at the session of their choice. And keep in mind, if you are running for next year, we do have session right before some of the critical election dates, so you may want to choose that one. But if you bring in a significant amount of products and you record your name on those pieces of paper, we will take into account and we will award those dress down days to those individuals or / committee. Is there any questions? The chief advisor has yielded to questions. Is there any questions for the chief advisor? Chairwoman Ravi. Any other questions for the chief advisor? Seeing none, thank you so much. We are now in line for a report from the student body treasurer. President Thompson, you are once again recognized to give a report.
Just from Hannah, they don't have too much to report, but they just wanted to be noted that they were consulted on the legislation tonight. And with that, I yield to questions.
The student body president yields to questions. Is there any questions for the president? Seeing none, thank you so much. We are now in line for a report from the student body vice president. Vice President Reeves, you are recognized.
Hey guys, happy Wednesday. Also keeping it brief. The Board of Visitors met today. Presentation about from the University Architect about plans for the future. A lot of things with like donors and Gift for Garnet and Carolina Day coming up, but a lot of things that are more relevant to alumni. And also for my DARLA senators, I am currently serving as the Vice President of Marketing for the Moore School Org Council. We're kind of trying to figure out what student government's place is there, so I might be reaching out to you guys, texting that group me, just to see what your thoughts on that are, just because it'd be pretty good opportunity, in my opinion, to to hear what your constituents in the Moore School would like to see from Senate or student government in general, but I will reach out to some of y'all with that. But with that, I yield to questions.
The Vice President yields to questions. Are there any questions for the Vice President? Seeing none, thank you so much. We are now in line for a report from the student body president. President Thompson, you are once again recognized.
My last time up here, I promise. Excited to see you all at the State of the Student Body tomorrow. Seating will be reserved for y'all in the middle section of the pews, similar to inauguration, so that should be nothing new. And I promise to keep my speech around 20 minutes. GR has been working super hard. Their reports are getting done. We have all the Carolina Day letters done. CAC met with the mayor last week, and they're planning Town and Gown actively, which will be mid-March. And planning is underway for the cab trip to DC at the end of February as well. From staff, just a reminder that Hoops Week is next week, and we'll be having SG tailgates on February 10th and February 11th, and there'll also be an Uber discount throughout that weekend. And then staff has also been meeting with the Safety Council to work on campus lighting initiatives and tabling in 5 points. We're also getting an optional Anne Frank Center tour scheduled for student government. And then from Faculty Senate, there will be a recommendation from the Standards and Petitions Committee to recommend that professors have grades in a 2-week grade turnaround. Also, thank you guys for filling out the Department Collaboration Award winner form. USCPD won with 55% of the vote, so we'll be recognizing them on the 28th. And with that, I yield to questions.
The student body president yields to questions. Are there any questions for the president? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Awesome.
We are now in line for a period of special orders of the Senate. Are there any letters, petitions, appointments, applications, or other? The clerk will now read.
Approval of the following committee assignments for the new confirmed vacant seat senators: Bella Brash, Powers and Responsibilities and Inclusion and Equity; Anita John, Health and Safety and Inclusion and Equity.
The question is of approval of the following committee assignments. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The committee assignments are approved. Continuing on.
A communication from the Office of the Speaker of the Student Senate concerning the resignation of Macy Galt from the position of Student Senator.
Received. Continuing on.
A communication from the Office of the Student Body President concerning the nomination of Corey Dunn and Sam Bryant to the positions of Constitutional Council Justices.
These nominations are hereby referred to the Judiciary Committee. Continuing on. Hearing no more special orders of the Senate, we are now in the motion period. Just a reminder, this is the period where you can add or remove yourself from any committee of your choosing. As a senator, you must be in at least one committee to a maximum of 3. Are there any motions currently on the floor? Senator LaPenta. There's been a motion to omnibus SBL 115, 49. Excuse me, actually. There's been a motion to omnibus SBL 11549, introduced by Senator LaPenta. A recommendation to specify what lab fees for classes that require additional fees are being used for. And SBL 11552, introduced by Senator LaPenta. Recommendation to make students aware of additional fees within courses while registering for that course. Currently, I don't think I'm going to recognize that motion in the first reading calendar. Once it makes it to the second reading calendar and it is before the voting period, please re-raise that motion so the Student Senate can vote on those bills, or excuse me, on those recommendations together. Omnibus motions, point of information, usually don't take effect before committee, just because committees will vote on them separately, and then once they get to the floor in the second reading calendar, then that's when they can be combined. Great motion, though. Any other motions on the floor? Also, point of information, if anyone is wondering what omnibus means, it just means that the two recommendations are similar in content and similar in nature. So when it gets to the second reading calendar, that means that they can be voted on as one because the content is very similar. And with that, are there any other motions on the floor? Seeing no more motions, is there a motion to dispense with the motion period? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. We are now on the call, the introduction of new legislation. The clerk will now read.
SBL 11549, introduced by Senator LaPenta, a recommendation to specify what lab fees for classes that require additional fees are being used for.
Senator LaPenta, you are recognized to speak on the legislation.
Okay, so this is just the first of two. I worked on this with Chairwoman Creed, and we decided that this piece of legislation actually should be split into two, so that's why I tried to omnibus the legislation. So the first one, 49, is just recommending that students are made aware of what lab fees are used for. So just to give you guys an example of what that might mean is like math fees. So you have required math classes. I don't know if anybody has had like a required math lab fee, but I don't know what that's used for. And any information that is presented to us by the university is super vague and not specific enough. So this piece of legislation is just to make it a little clearer where that money goes. And with that, I yield to questions.
The senator yields to questions. Are there any questions for the senator? Chairman Harvey.
Hopefully there's a website currently that lists like, it says in the notes section, there's a little asterisk and you can click on it and it brings you to a section that's like, this lab fee is used for materials, items, etc. Instead of materials and items, it will be this lab fee is used for this.
Any other questions for the senator? Seeing none, the legislation is referred to the Academics Committee. Continuing on the call.
SBL 11552, introduced by Senator LaPinta, a recommendation to make students aware of additional fees within courses while registering for that course.
Senator LaPinta, you are once again recognized to speak on the legislation.
So this is just the second piece. It goes hand in hand with the first one. All it does is recommend that the university add an indication of an additional fee. So that definition is in the legislation. So if you guys are interested in that specific definition, what that means, it's in the piece of legislation. Specifically under the course information tab, which typically only includes 1 or 2 sentences describing what the course is about. Like my argumentation debate class had like, we argue basically. It was super simple and easy, but an additional note should be added so that a student is aware of an additional fee for that course. Not necessarily saying what the fee is, but there is going to be one. And that's all that says. So with that, I yield to questions.
The senator yields to questions. Are there any questions for the senator? Senator Felix.
So that definition is defined in the legislation. So I don't have it up with me right now, but if you want, it's in the introduced legislation folder. So,
Senator Hamilton.
Correct. Yes. It's just, honestly, it's really just to give those students a heads up, because I know some students are living on a semester-to-semester basis, and the required classes sometimes do have those lab fees, and if a student cannot pay it in the semester that they need to take the course, they can like schedule that course for next semester or something like that when they can have the fee.
Any other questions for the senator? Senator Kaye.
Thank you.
Jose, is there a question?
Thank
Senator?
you. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and I would be willing to make an amendment on the legislation if that was something you wanted to do. You're talking about 52, correct? Yes. Okay. No, that's okay. And yeah, I'd be totally willing to make an amendment if that is something you'd be willing to work on. Yeah. The reason
Is there a question in there? Okay.
Yes, it was because the very first piece of legislation addressed the fact that where that money is going is vague in the first place. So the reason I put it so vague in my definition is because that was the definition that the university gave me. So I mean, I didn't see any other other definition, but if there was one, I'd be willing to make an amendment to it. So. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for the senator? Senator Vaught.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Is there one question in your statement, sir?
So my plan after these bills recommendations hopefully get passed, is to first speak with the advising department, because that's ultimately where 52 lives, is in that course registration part. So that little note that says there is a lab fee is really only an advisor kind of realm. And if they can't edit that, they can put me in contact with somebody who can. So that would this is more of my reasoning, my backup. This is like, student government passed this, so this is we think that this should happen. We represent people, so this is what should happen, essentially. And then as for the first one, it would kind of be the same process, talking with the people who created the website and defined that term so vaguely, and asking, hey, is there any way we could change this? Here's this piece of legislation that backs it up.
Any other questions for the senators? Chairwoman Creed. Any other questions for the senator? Seeing none, thank you so much. This legislation is referred once again to the Academics Committee. Contending on the call.
SBL 11553, introduced by Senators Kay and Vought, a bill to amend Chapter 3 of the codes to promote equitability and clarity in fund distributions to student entities.
Senator Kay and Vought, you are recognized to speak on the legislation.
Thank you all. I know y'all are getting tired of seeing me up here, and I'm going to try to be very, very brief because I know this will get sent to committee. It might get edited, might not. We hope to make a perfect bill, but we know that is not the case. That being said, this is a huge bill. There is a lot of content in it. I think I'm going to just really, really fast go over the biggest changes we made, and then I'm going to let questions be asked. Like I mentioned previously, we cut down a lot of fat. We previously had 8 articles. We moved it down to 5. We also reorganized how they were set. So previously, like a student organization would have to go to section 2 and then section 5 and then section 7. And we thought that was unnecessary. So we took all the student government functions and we put them at the top, and then everything necessary for student orgs at the bottom. So we can just say, go to section 5 and down. That's all you need to look at, and that's for y'all. So we wanted to make that very, very clear. We also did some changes to how funding occurred. We set up some soft caps, as well as our priority order, which I mentioned previously in the slides. We also split up the budget, so if we do get a nice larger pool, hopefully we get to use it all, but we are hoping to ensure that if I'm a spring organization and we are burning through money relatively quickly, that we don't have to worry about not having any funds for the next semester. So we've just got a lot of kind of soft caps in there to ensure that money is going to be available for organizations when they need it.
That's mostly it. We also did some wording changes, so all the wording is the same across the whole document, so we don't have different terms for the same exact thing. Clean that up. But yeah, we also added a thing about senators and finance committee to help reduce biases. Finance committee members and chairmen, they can't make requests anymore from the organization, and the organization has to make requests, and if the senator is related to the board, they kind of take it away. Finance committee's job, fighting biases. Yeah, I think those are the biggest changes.
Do you yield to questions?
We will yield to questions.
The senators yield to questions. Are there any questions for the senators? Senator Brosh.
So the intention with the soft cap is any organization that requests greater than $10,000 as it's currently set, and obviously this can be amended, we basically add a secondary layer of approval, which means if we're willing to give you $10,000 and afterwards you're still requesting funds, we want to take a second look at what you're requesting. Our previous system was very much as long as the requirements were met, you typically could receive your funding. And so we've set more a priority-based system wherein, look, we want to fund everything. We know that's not always a possibility. We want to make sure what we think is valuable gets funded. And if you've already requested $40,000 this year, we're gonna try and look at other people. We're going to ensure that this money is spent appropriately. And so that's kind of some of those soft caps, which still means if they exceed that $10,000 limit or they hit it, the finance committee can absolutely let them go beyond. It just adds that second layer of, well, let's consider this.
Any other questions for the senators? In point of information, I would definitely recommend that everyone takes a look at this piece of legislation between now and committee and possible between committee and second reading, because it is a very long piece of legislation. It completely changes and rewrites Chapter 3 of our codes, probably one of the biggest code additions in student government's history, one of the biggest, excuse me. So please be engaged, do your due diligence as a senator, and please read through this. So if you do have any questions, they can answer it before any voting takes place on a committee level or possibly a second reading. Any other questions for the senators? Seeing no more questions, the legislation is referred to the Finance Committee. Continuing on the call.
SBL 11554, introduced by Senator Kay and Vaught, a bill to reform the duties of the comptrollers.
Senator Kay and Vaught, you are recognized once again to speak on the legislation.
Hey y'all, I'm back. Again, really fast. We got brought this by the actual comptrollers themselves. They wanted some changes to their roles and responsibilities, and we looked at it and was like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. We altered their language a little bit to kind of fall in line with what we had been doing with our big old bill. So for the most part, what this does is just ensures that their responsibilities are a little clearer. They know what they're doing, and let's say we go back and change the finance codes again in the next year, which very well could happen, that they're informed of those kind of updates. I'll yield to questions unless you have anything you'd like to say. I'll yield to questions.
The senators yield to questions. Are there any questions for the senators? Seeing no more questions, the legislation is referred to the Finance Committee. Continuing on the call. Hearing none, we are now on the call. The uncontested calendar, the clerk will now read.
SBL 11550, introduced by Senator Miller, a recommendation to honor the life of Carlton Thompson, aka Gamecock Jesus, at the Colonial Life Arena.
Senator Miller, you are recognized to speak on the legislation.
Hey y'all, pretty much same thing as last week. I don't think it's very controversial legislation. Just want to add a plaque in Gamecock Jesus' remembrance, and I yield to questions.
The senator yields to questions. Are there any questions for the senator? And point of information, I think this is your first piece of legislation. Congratulations, it's an amazing piece. I think we've all felt the loss of Gamecock Jesus at our basketball games, so I know this is much appreciated. Senator Harvey, or excuse me, Chairman Harvey.
I have not yet. I'm not really sure who to get in contact, so I'm still working with that. I imagine Senator Calder would know.
Senator Calder. Any other questions for the senator? Senator Kay. There's been a motion to adopt unanimous consent, which is basically just acclamation. Is there a second? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The legislation is adopted through unanimous consent. In point of information, acclamation and unanimous consent are one and the same. Unanimous consent essentially means that it's passed unanimously by the body, same thing as we do with our financial allocations. So that was a really cool piece of Robert's rules that you guys just discovered. All right, and now continue on the call of the uncontested legislation. Hearing none, we are now on the call of the contested calendar. Hearing none, we are now in line for a period of open discussion. Does any senator wish to bring a matter of attention to the body? Senator Miller, you are recognized. Point of information, you would say like point of inquiry or... The final session will take place, point of information, the final session will take place right before inauguration of the new executive officers. So that would be off the top of my head. I think it's the 17th, I believe, in March. Yep. So we do go to mid-March so it's literally right up till inauguration. And then we end the term and I hand the gavel on to the next individual. Any other matters of attention that someone wants to bring to the floor? Senator Hamilton. You do, unfortunately. Unless if it was like a point of inquiry or like a motion for something.
I just wanted to say, to keep it really brief, congratulations to current Chairman Bryant on being nominated for Constitutional Counsel. To clarify, he will be obviously recusing himself from the process because he shouldn't be voting on himself. But as Vice Chairwoman, I will be running the hearings, both Chairman Bryant's and our second nominee on Friday. Everyone's welcome to come. It's open. I'd be happy to see people there. So I yield the question.
And point of information, next Wednesday, this vice chairperson will become the chairperson of the Judiciary Committee, which is very, very exciting, depending on things. So please give her the same respect that you gave Chairman Bryant, and please give her the same attention that you gave Chairman Bryant. And if you're in that committee specifically, please go to the interviews. These are very important positions in student government. They technically are quote-unquote life terms, so the bar for candidacy is pretty high. So please make sure that you attend the interviews, because again, we won't be able to vote on those nominees without quorum. So if you have an issue with any of the candidates, that should not bar you from going.
Please come. Point of information, quorum is 4. So,
Any other questions for Vice Chairwoman Hamilton? Seeing none, thank you so much. Is there any other senator wishing to bring a matter of attention to the body? Seeing none, we are now in line for a period of announcements. Are there any announcements from the floor? Chairwoman Ravi, you're recognized.
So you haven't heard one of these in a long time, so I'm going to make this announcement really brief. As you know, I shamelessly promoted the writing group that I run last semester, and I'm doing it again. Fun fact, it is now expanded to a 3rd hospital in South Carolina, the hospital that is up in Greenville. So we are currently looking to recruit people for there. We do have a couple of USC School of Medicine Greenville students who want to participate, but if y'all know any friends who are pre-med, pre-PA, social work, basically any healthcare profession that is up in Greenville and is interested in psych and looking for volunteering opportunities, please have them reach out to me. And with that, I yield to questions.
The chairwoman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the chairwoman? Seeing none, thank you. Oh, so sorry, Senator Felix.
Yeah. So the layout of the group is it's a journaling group, so we sit down and we journal with psychiatric patients, basically. Yeah. No, we do like therapeutic journaling with psych patients. Thank you. Yeah.
Any other questions for the senator? Seeing none, thank you so much. Any other announcements from the floor? Speaker Pro Tempore Baber, you are recognized.
Okay, super brief because everybody wants to leave. I know everybody says that, but it will actually be really fast. So Phi Alpha Delta is still recruiting, and if you guys are interested in it, it's the pre-law fraternity, one of the pre-law fraternities on campus. And we are recruiting until February 6th. So if you guys are interested, please just message me and I'll give you all the information. I yield my time to questions.
The Speaker Pro Tempore yields to questions. Are there any questions for the Speaker Pro Tempore? Saying none, thank you so much. Are there any other announcements on the floor? Seeing none, as always, I do have an announcement, but I physically just feel like I cannot talk anymore, so it will be very brief. Please keep the legislative workshop on your calendar. We'd love for everyone to come because, again, the way it's designed is it's supposed to be old senators and new, not just new. It's supposed to work on all of your ideas and to turn them into concrete legislation to pass before the end of the term. Election filing does begin next Monday, and it goes until next Tuesday by the end of business day. And then there is a mandatory candidates meeting next Tuesday night. If you file with the Elections Commission and the Leadership and Service Center, you are required to go to this meeting Tuesday night. If you cannot attend, you need to immediately, once you file, let the Elections Commissioner know or anyone on the Elections Commission team know that you're unable to attend so they can figure out another avenue for that. And then the debate will be happening as soon as soft campaigning ends, and that will be happening around mid to late February. We do have a Senate session the night of the debate. So the debate actually will be taking place inside the Russell House Theater, unlike past years, which is super exciting. So the debate will happen as soon as Senate is concluded on that Wednesday. And again, this will all be gone over in the mandatory meeting. And then the inauguration of the elected officials will happen in March. I highly encourage all of you to run if you're not a senior. Like I said, I am more than happy to talk about my position, what I do. I know I'm also happy to talk about senatorial positions. I was a senator for 2.5 years. I ran both times. So I can talk about what that entails. But please, if you're interested in being an executive officer, please talk to that corresponding executive officer so they can at least give you kind of the rundown of maybe the requirements that may not be seen on paper, i.e. the hours that you have to put into this job, or the relationships that you build, and just kind of the things that you experience along. We don't bite, I promise. But we look forward to the election season, and please, if you're interested in running for Senate or my position, please come and talk to me. All right, and with that, I will finally yield to questions. Are there any questions for me? Seeing none, is there any other announcements on the floor? Seeing none. With no further announcements, is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. The Senate will now stand adjourned until Wednesday, February 7th, 2024.